Hi guys, this is Mizuki Arts. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be illustrating, or rather making illustrations inspired by books that I read when I was little and made a truly lasting impact on me. I'm not sure if there are any other homeschool kids watching this, but I was actually homeschooled for a few years, and during this time my reading level actually went way up. I was homeschooled from the 5th to 8th grade, and I spent a lot of time reading out of books that my mom had kept after her time in college, and even some of my grandmother's old books as well. I won't go into details about the events of these stories that I read, but I will talk about some of the reasons that they left such an impact on me, and the first one I want to go over is Of Mice and Men. Now, you've probably heard of this one, as it's pretty much a pillar in American education. I think it's most commonly read during high school or college, and it's typically read in like English classes and stuff, which is to be expected, I suppose, for like literature. But I actually read it when I was around 12, maybe 13 at latest, I'm not sure. To sum it up as quickly as possible, it is about two men traveling for work during the Great Depression, one of them being George, a shorter, clever man, and his childhood friend, Lenny, who is a mentally disabled, kind of strong guy, I guess. I'm not sure how to sum it up, really. And essentially, they have a dream to get a farm together where they can have bunnies and chickens and all that good stuff. But by the end of the story, they don't get that. There's a lot of foreshadowing about what's going to happen throughout the story. Through their conversations, it's heavily implied that they can't hold a job down because of Lenny, and essentially it seems like it's sort of a loop. And by that I mean George and Lenny travel for work. Lenny does something or is involved in some kind of scandal, and George has to get them out of it, and they have to keep repeating this cycle to keep some money and hopefully one day be able to afford a plot of land. Some of the main themes in this story include loneliness, prejudice, and preconceptions about people. And essentially throughout this story we see characters that aren't even listened to ever, but Lenny listens to them because he doesn't understand preconceptions about people or hold prejudices, which is really unique and really touching that Lenny, this character that George blames for everything that goes wrong, has the biggest heart of any of them, and we see in him a lot of, I don't know, like empathy for others that even he doesn't understand. Like, Lenny himself doesn't go into these conversations with these characters that don't feel like they're listened to, looking to be someone's therapist, but he sits there and listens regardless of who they are or what he's heard about them. And I think that's a really special thing, and it makes the end of the story all the more tragic because I don't want to spoil it for you guys, even though this story's been out for years and years. Just to sum it up, something goes terribly wrong with one of the people that Lenny had been empathetic towards, and he makes a big mistake, and George and Lenny don't get their farm. And worst of all, George and Lenny are separated in a way, and George is left lonelier than ever, and I can't tell you what happens to Lenny. This story broke my heart into pieces the first time that I read it, and it was just as bad reading it the second time. John Steinbeck is an amazing writer, and honestly, if you ever get a chance to read Of Mice and Men, I really suggest you do. It has a ton of suspense, a ton of build-up, and it's just really well done overall. Some of John Steinbeck's other works are Grapes of Wrath. At least that's the one that I've heard most about, maybe more than Of Mice and Men. But really, just if you get a chance to read Of Mice and Men, whether it's in school or online, or you go to your local library and you find it, just read it. It's really good. That's it for my rendition of Mice and Men. And the next one we're going to do is called The Awakening. There's a huge content warning for this one, even though I think it handles it pretty beautifully. If you're sensitive to like mental health stuff, I would definitely maybe skip the next few minutes. But essentially, this is a story about a woman named Edna. She's a mother and a wife, and she essentially kind of figures out one day that she's really kind of not loving her life at the moment, and essentially she's just bored of it all. There are lots of interesting things that go on around her in the story, but none of them really make her want to smile or like even feel anything. She's pretty dull about it all. We don't even see much of her personality, I think, just because she's in such a state with it all. She receives lots of letters from people that are interested in her in one way or another, especially from men that are interested in her, but none of them interest her at all. She even sees friends and family that travel to see her, and she spends time at a beach house, and eventually the only thing we see that brings her any kind of joy is when she begins to teach herself how to swim. But even in this time where she's beginning to do something for herself, the story is really driven by what's going on around her, and she's just sort of kind of like an empty shell of a person. And I don't remember if there's something that triggered the ending or not, since it was so long ago that I read this. But essentially one day she swims out as far as she can into the ocean, and she lets herself kind of sink into it. And this is basically how the story ends. It's kind of like, well, for me it felt like when you're in the middle of like a really dramatic song or something, and it just stops very suddenly at like the high note or something. I don't know. I'm not really super familiar with music, but I think it's the best way to describe it, and I think that's how it's supposed to feel. One of the biggest critiques I saw online was that it was just a huge downer, so it wasn't really received well. But to be honest, I think it was pretty ahead of its time in regards to dealing with mental health and essentially the delicacy and suddenness of mental health struggles, how quickly they can come on, and that they can happen to anyone at any time. So it was very heartbreaking, especially for like 12-year-old me, but I guess it was just kind of the book that I like sat down and was like, okay, and like I just didn't think about it for a little while. Yeah. Even though it's super sad, I definitely recommend you read it, because the way the author wrote a story entirely driven by a character that has no goal is forever fascinating to me. It's really heartbreaking, but it's such a revolutionary story to me. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this little adventure back in time for me, and hopefully you found something that if you haven't already read that you're going to read, because both of Mice and Men and The Awakening are fantastic stories. So as always, thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and let me know down below if there's any particular video topic you want to explore more of, because I have a couple ideas in mind, but I'd always love to hear from you guys too. Here's something I've never gotten to do before. Thank you so much to my Ko-fi supporters. These two lovely individuals are people that have donated in one way or another to my, I guess, pursuit of art since the last video that I made. And you should all know that subscription tiers are coming to Ko-fi soon, so if you want to support me, now's the perfect time to get lots of fun rewards. And after the mandatory plug for my Ko-fi page, I want to say thank you all so much for the support, the love I've received on this channel, on my Instagram, and on my Ko-fi page blows me away every day. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you guys next time. Bye!